In the world of music, everything moves fast. The artist, the lifestyle, the technology, the trends, turning the industry nefarious just to stay on top. Making it even more impressive, that Billboard's been at the forefront of the music industry for decades, influencing labels, artists, and fans like no other. It has become a standard for how we rank music, but it took over 120 years for it to get there. 1894, Cincinnati, Ohio, on 127 8th Street, William Donaldson and John Hennigan released their first ever publication under the name The Billboard Advertising. Originally, the release had nothing to do with music, with the earliest iterations only containing billboards and advertising. Ironically, actual billboards and posters was the main source of advertising back then, so they were taking advantage. William would take care of the content side, writing and drafting, while Hennigan owned a printing company, so he took care of physical production. Their first set of magazines, though, would start at 8 pages long. Over time, they would add different columns like beer room gossip, and even at one point running an obituary. 1896 came, and the Agricultural Affairs Department in the company was added. The next year, the company was renamed to just The Billboard. Unfortunately, Donaldson and Hennigan were part over editorial differences, but the company was in bankruptcy. Donaldson only had one choice. He had to buy Hennigan's share of the company for $500. Today, that'll be 15 grand. Moving into the 1900s, Billboard started printing a few hundred copies a month, and expansion was their next move, making its own plant while opening branches in other cities. Donaldson also made a drastic switch from monthly to weekly releases and only focusing on breaking news. Sharpening his editorial pen, Donaldson would spread the influence of the Billboard to New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Paris. The magazine would change its lens toward entertainment, adding a stage gospel section that focused on a lot of celebrities, as well as carnival, circus, and fairs. In 1904, rurals were becoming more and more popular. Billboard would take advantage of this, creating a mail system for entertainers. The location of the entertainer was tracked in the paper. Since the entertainer was on the road, they would have the mail sent to one of the Billboard offices. Once it got there, the company would publish that they received their mail. The system itself was genius. It gave the company the leverage it needed financially and led to many celebrity contacts. Billboard in the 1920s would try its hand at music, setting sights on jukeboxes, phonographs, and radio, which at the time was revolutionizing the world. Doubling down in transition, a black journalist named James Albert Jackson was hired to work on a new column for black artists, which is controversial to say the least. William went as far as to create a policy against performers being identified by their race, making Billboard ahead of his time. Donaldson sadly would pass away, and Billboard would fall into bankruptcy once again. His son-in-law, Roger Lilliford, would save the company from its potential downfall. Billboard wasn't the only one that was poor. America as a whole was in bad shape, suffering from the Great Depression, but a new machine was on the horizon, one that would connect Americans across the country. The jukebox. The music machine gave Billboard an opportunity, and they took it, back in the jukebox in a way that no one could. It's early 1936, and Billboard comes out with its first music hit parade, a music list with the most popular songs. They didn't know it at the time, but this set the company on track to become one of the biggest moving parts in the music industry. Billboard started out the 40s introducing the first Billboard music chart, tracking the popularity of songs based off sheet music and jukebox play, creating a separate chart for the jukebox called Music Box Machine in 1994. The company was evolving. Charts started to include retail record sales and airplay, and these early charts set the basis for what was to come, dividing charts by genres like hillbilly, which is now known as country, race records, later known as R&B, and pop. Moving was becoming the norm for Billboard. In 2 years, they moved twice, ending up in New York City. By the end of the 40s, Billboard wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The 50s were major. The magazine changed to a 5-column format. The best-selling popular albums was launched, turning to the infamous Billboard 200 in later years. Most importantly, Billboard released the iconic Hot 100 chart, listing the hottest singles for that release. And the first ever #1 song on the chart will be Ricky Nelson's Pour a Little Fool. In January 1961, Billboard changed the magazine's name to Billboard Music Week to further highlight the deeper movement to music. A couple years later, the magazine would be named just Billboard. At the start of the 70s, disco was blown up from the nighttime, and the publication had a big part to play in disco success. A chart called Disco Action was created in 1974 to track club play from DJs across the U.S. Starting in the 80s, Billboard continued to increase its reach into music spaces, becoming more modernized, expanding its coverage to video, cable TV, home entertainment, and most importantly, MTV, which it launched in 1981. MTV's arrival sparked a major increase in the video side of music. It became so popular that it led to Billboard to factor in video play as a metric into its charts. Fast innovation of how the world consumed music showed that Billboard's biggest asset wasn't money or celebrity contacts. It was adaptability. Billboard started up the 90s launching the Billboard Music Awards, a yearly award show honoring top-performing artists on the charts. The data the company used to release the charts was switched to use data from the Nielsen SoundScan in May of 1991. It finally provided Billboard with objective real-time sales data, affecting charts greatly. Many hip-hop, rock, and country artists charted higher. Nirvana, Tupac, and Garth Brooks all saw jumps on the Billboard 200, which was the first chart to use a SoundScan. The Hot 100 will follow using the Nielsen Broadcast Data System, or BDS. The system made room for new charts like the mainstream Top 40, rhythmic songs, and modern rock tracks. A big change would happen for Billboard in 1994. They were acquired by a Dutch media company, VNU. The same company will also acquire Nielsen, bringing the BDS and Billboard under the same roof. In the mid to late 90s, physical sales declined, and airplay became more dominant, causing them to drop their commercial single agreement, which made it so songs had to be released physically to count for the Hot 100. Billboard also released their first website, making them the earliest music trade publication online. They would keep building internationally, launching different charts and versions of the magazine in other countries. All these changes throughout the 90s allowed Billboard to stay relevant with music, but a storm was looming. The 2000s rolled around and things would change fast. Apple launched iTunes in 2003, flipping the music world on its head. Billboard kept up by releasing the hot digital track chart and factoring paid downloads into the Hot 100 formula. May the next year, the looming storm struck. Editor-in-chief Keith Gear and senior editor Samantha Chain will be fired. The two employees filed a $29 million lawsuit, alleging that Billboard's publisher John Kilcullen, executive editor Ken Scaliger, VNU's Howard Lander, and others had committed gender and race-based discrimination, sexual harassment, retaliation firing, and intra-office sabotage, while having a workplace culture where corporate management sacrificed editorial integrity for the sake of financial interests. Both ex-employees claimed that sexual play between senior and junior levels was encouraged. Music labels are also no help. Kilcullen told Gear not to put on any editorials that might anger major labels and lead them to withhold advertising or cancel subscriptions. The lawsuit will be settled in court before juries will be selected for an undisclosed amount in 2006. Around the mid-2000s, music was becoming more convenient to listen to, and the Hot 100 followed, shifting its formula again in favor of airplay over physical singles since they're becoming more outdated. Ringtones became so popular that Billboard released the Hot Ringtones chart in 2000. Billboard's website grew to include music videos and interactive charts, allowing the website to turn into a major hub for all things music. Billboard ended up being sold to E-Fly Global Media, along with 8 other publications, including The Hollywood Reporter. With the rise of social media in the 2010s, the music world started to become more convenient and somehow even more complicated. Billboard would drop the top social 50 chart, measuring artist engagement. Streaming also became king, so it started to include streaming data into the charts. YouTube views were officially added to the Hot 100, allowing the song Harlem Shake to debut #1 on the Hot 100 due to its popularity on the platform. Starting in 2014, Billboard would include track equivalent albums and streaming equivalent albums in the Billboard 200. This made 10 song downloads equal to 1 sale, and 1,500 streams of a song also equal to 1 sale, marking the beginning of the transition from a pre-sale model towards a mainly consumption model. Another parent company named LG Industry acquired Billboard in 2016. As the years progressed, streaming became a strong factor in the Hot 100 and Billboard 200 rankings. Paid streams have also changed away more towards stats than the free ones. The CEO of Billboard, John Motto, resigned because of sexual misconduct allegations and suppressing sexual harassment in the music industry. The company will face backlash over its transparency, changing how it was seen in the public. Billboard eventually went through updating the way they calculate charts, with paid metrics being weighted the highest, ad-supported being in the middle, and free being weighted the lowest. The reason Billboard gave was that it reflected listener interest, giving more power to active engagement over passive listening. August of 2018 arrived, and controversy would strike Billboard again. Nicki Minaj accused Travis Scott of manipulating the Billboard 200 by bundling his album Asteroid with his merchandise and tour passes, beating her album Queen for the #1 spot. She wrote on Twitter, "I looked at the numbers. The Carters, Kanye, Nas, etc. recently did. Travis sold 200K in his first week of clothes alone." She also said, "I spoke to him last night. He said he's been selling clothes before the music. Billboard says they changed the rules because of this, so it should be changed now, with no dates for a tour, etc. I spoke to him. He knows he doesn't have the #1 album this week." Ultimately, this pushed Billboard to ban most album sale bundles. Billboard will find a way to track streaming, while Tidal and Amazon will come more into the streaming calculations. A few months later in 2019, a new song will be on the rise, Lil Nas X's country song, Old Town Road. Billboard shockingly removed the song from the country chart, causing a national conversation around gender bias, who gets to decide what is country music, racial gatekeeping, and race and music classification. The song still will go on to top the Hot 100 for 19 weeks, breaking the record. Merch bundles had to be changed again. Bundles had to be priced at least $3.49 more than the standalone merch, and they must be sold separately on the artist's website, available individually too. Later, Billboard put in a ban that started merch and ticket album bundles from counting towards the Billboard 200 and Hot 100. By this point, only add-on bundles and shipped physical sales were eligible. For the last few years, Billboard has mostly dodged controversies, continuing to work on its tracking systems, chasing up the perfect balance between objective data, making labels happy, and keeping fans tuned in. But that's what happens when you're at the top, when you're at the center.